The Lenovo P11 Plus and the Samsung Galaxy Tab A8, which do you buy? Alright, so a little bit of a comparison video for you here. It's been a while since I've done one of these, come to think of it, but then again, it has been a while since I've had two comparable tablets. Now, this one is the Lenovo Tab P11 Plus. This is a wee bit older, I have to say, but it's one of the best looking prices at the moment for the value of what you get. Against it is the Tab A8. This is another one that looks very good for the money. I've had this for maybe about a year, and my unboxing and thoughts are already on my channel and they're linkable. And then this is just in, so I'm not as familiar with this, but I'm making a choice between the two as to which I prefer. Now, straight out of the gates, I'm going to point out that this has a large amount more storage on it than that, and I think it's got more RAM as well. I paid in the realms of the mid 200s, I think, for this. However, at this point in time, the 64GB version of the P11 Plus it's like £150, I think, as opposed to this, which is 180. But given deals and times of the year, and depending on who you go to, you could find a slightly differing price. So I'm going to try, where possible, to talk about the base model of this and not take into account that extra storage. In saying that, the base model of this is 64GB. The base model of this is 32GB. And I've got a funny feeling what way this is going to go, because whilst I'm trying to say which one is better, obviously everyone's use case is slightly different. Some people prefer to stream, other people prefer to take things with them. And my point of view right now is that I use this because it's the 128GB version, plus I have 256GB of storage in it, so I can take a lot of media with me whenever I go away for long periods of time. If you just want something that's cheap and around the house to do a bit of streaming, we'll have to look at that slightly differently. So, to start off, the Lenovo here has a larger 11-inch screen, and I've tried to arrange the screen so they're not going to turn off and on all the time. You can get a bit of a flavour as to whether or not one's brighter than the other. There are lights and things and auto brightnesses, so some can look brighter than others at different periods, but we'll have a look at the screens as we go on. Obviously this has a larger screen real estate, which makes it a wee bit bulkier and heavier, because it is that wee bit bulkier and heavier, or so you would think. This has a full metal frame to it, a whole much higher quality rear to it, and that actually makes this the heavier unit. I'm not going to go into the specifics of grams because I can't. I don't have them with me, and my scales are down in the house, and my phone is way over there for the internet, so I'm not going to quickly look it up, and I think it'll probably differ. There's a couple. This is the newest A8. It was released this year, I believe. It says 2023 on Amazon, but you can straight away tell that's heavier than that when you pick it up. There's no competition about it. This is the lighter unit. Inside of them, we have an octa-core processor on the Lenovo, which is rated at 2.5 gigahertz, dual core with Cortex A76. And then inside of this, we have an octa-core 4x2 gigahertz cryo chip. So I think what we could do is we'll do a quick benchmark, and for those who are looking to do a bit of gaming, we'll probably benefit from seeing the single and multi-core scores. So right here you can see, I thought this was up to Android 13. I could have sworn this had Android 13 on it. Maybe not, but I believe Android 13 is being talked about for it. So there you go, that's something to throw into the mix there. This isn't Android 13, this is. If that matters to you, then obviously you need your Android 13. But you can see this has the tablet influences on it here, where it's got the shorter menu buttons, and Google have taken time with various versions of new Android to make it a bit more tablet friendly. This would be running the stock Android version that isn't as tablet friendly, and the one that we should all pretty much be used to. So I'm going to run the benchmark on each of these and have a look and see which one comes out better. And I guess we could categorically say that one is better than the other by doing that. And it would probably apply to gaming more so than anything else, or productivity. All right, so the Samsung's decided to finish. I guess you could probably guess which was going to win then, or which is going to have the better outcome. For the octa-core processors that are around about 2 gigahertz each, there is a notable difference, but then this has a better chance. It's got 6 gigabytes of RAM. I was just thinking about that. I didn't introduce that at the start. That's a bit unfair. This only has 3 gigabytes of RAM because it's the base model off Amazon. This one I've spent more on. I guess whenever you boil it down, if you were to buy the base model of this, which comes with 4 gigabytes of RAM, it's still going to wipe the face of the earth of the Samsung. This is running Android 12. That's their Android 13. Perhaps there's something in that. I doubt it. I would have liked to have thought that Android 13 would bring a better experience to the running of these tablets, but it doesn't. So there. Now, as I said, the storage is a big thing to be concerned about, and this has expandable storage, as does this. I have never filled this at 128 gigabytes. I went for that as opposed to the 64 gigabyte because I knew that I would fill the 64 gigabyte. I couldn't live with 32. I have tried in the past. I have an older Samsung tablet that's 32 gigabytes, and I had to move away from it because it just didn't work. Even my child had a 32 gigabyte Huawei and filled it full of games, and it was a constant battle for storage space, and they didn't want to lose this game and this game and this game, but we had to make some sort of compromise to be able to free up some space for them to install yet more games. Moving stuff to an SD card is all well and good, but in reality that's not a great solution, especially whenever it comes to apps, because a memory card can corrupt, and in that case you lose an awful lot of stuff, and one day whenever you go to sit down to your tablet, you've got a nightmare on your hands. I've had that happen. Never again. And some tablets just don't allow you to do it, like Huawei. And this one does allow you to do it, but as you can see from my unboxing video, if you've watched that, you'll know that I had some trouble moving a larger game, I think it was, over onto the SD card, whereas it wouldn't work, it wouldn't transfer, but a smaller one did, which is counterproductive to the whole task in general. Right from the word go here, you can see which it has the nicer screen. I think this has a much nicer screen. It's brighter. It is. Looking at the specifications, yes, this should have the better screen. It has. It is the smaller of the two. Whilst they're both 1200 by 2000, this one being smaller can pack more PPI or pixels per inch, and comes out at 224, whereas this is 212. This is an IPC LCD. This is an IPS LCD. But I think looking at them both now, there are some lights that are maybe affecting stuff, and if I was to toggle with some of the brightness settings, that might give off a bit more of a white flavouring, whereas this might look a wee bit duller than that. So it might have just been the brightness was down on this, and instantly this looked better. But if I was to whack them both up to full, oh no, that's gone back down again, right. Stop that. I have to take off the adaptive brightness. They're both at peak brightness, and I think this one does look more natural, although that might gouge your eyes out late at night. This might be a little bit more easy on the... I don't know which I prefer. It's difficult to say right now. But I'll say that I prefer this because it's bigger. Yeah, we'll go with that. That one's just bigger. Yeah. Battery-wise, this has a 7,500 milliamp hour battery in it. That one has an 8,000. So that's going to get you through the day. Also, this has a bigger screen that the battery's going to be powering. That might be a bit of a game changer for some. And I can understand why people would then go for that little bit of extra battery life. I use this an awful lot, and I've never really noticed it to be a bit crap on battery. It's always lasted me through a day, and I've watched a number of feature films on it, or at least TV shows totaling up to feature film kind of length, and I've never thought, oh, I'm running low on battery power. I charge it maybe twice a week. This one I haven't had long enough, so I haven't had to be able to test all of the battery facilities, but there was a day that I went to it and it was dead, and that kind of irked me. I hadn't used it in a few days. I had been out at work and taken this with me, but yeah, it was dead whenever I came to it, and I've never actually had that with this, I don't think. But I will say this: the software suite on each of them is massively different, and that really factors in it when it comes to web browsing and things like that. This uses Samsung's browser, and it's on a Samsung device, and it works really nicely. It's really smooth. This runs Chrome, and it runs about as well as you'd expect Chrome to run on a cheap tablet. It runs quite well. I wouldn't write home about it. It's what you've got. I wouldn't move away from it. I wouldn't go and try and install Samsung on this because I don't think it'll run anywhere near as nicely as it does on this. But this feels optimized for the browser, or the browser feels optimized for the tablet. And that is a key feature if you're looking for web browsing and you're not interested in storage and media and all that kind of thing, and you just want a tablet to sit down and read stuff on. When it comes to the Samsung suite of apps on this, you will have a better experience than most of the suite of apps here. It's one thing that I've been looking for and I've noticed, but it's something to take into account if you really, really rely on just a nice, smooth experience. Now, the Lenovo came with one of these, which surprised me, which is for the American folks out there. This is a European Union energy card that shows you, a bit like a fridge or something like that, or a freezer. It shows you just how energy efficient the tablet is. The Samsung didn't have one of these with it, but it was one extra thing that made me think that, okay, Lenovo's done that then. Now, it is possible that I could have just got some sort of foreign stock, and this is British stock, not sure. And this was required to be in it because this was originally shipped to Spain or somewhere like that. And this could be one of those things that Brexit is causing, because we don't need these, or we shouldn't have these, or blah, blah, blah. But this didn't have anything like that. But that was one thing that was a wee bit reassuring about stuff, was that it's an A+ rated tablet. It's not down at the C's and D's. And I'm kind of curious to see what this would work out to be if it did have one of these. If you've got one of these and you've bought this out in the wilds of the continent, let us know in the comments box down below, and give us an energy rating. I'm certainly not going to go off and Google it. I'm not that curious, but just a wee bit curious. And now I'm trying to work out, is it actually from this? Do I own anything else that is Lenovo based? I don't think so. I think this is it. This has a fairly clunky, well, maybe not clunky, but fairly unattractive system update procedure that it goes through, and it takes forever whenever they do. That's how I know I've had 4 updates since I've had it, which is quite a lot in 6 months. The Samsung uses a more traditional and familiar software update route, and I've had 4 updates on it as well. But it arrived with, I think, Android 11 on it, and then there was 12, then a security update, and then 13 just arrived. So I'd say this would be one step ahead of it than the Lenovo in updates. And I do much prefer being able to use this than this. This just reminds me of when tablets were back on Froyo and people were ripping up Android and doing what they liked with it and had to use something like this because they couldn't get what they were doing through the Google update service. The likes of Arcos and strange cheap little tablets that came along and you had to try and get an update out of them. That's what this reminds me of, and that could be a problem, an off-putting thing. It works exactly the same way, just looks different. So then onto the camera, you can see that I think this is more of a stock Android one. This has some Samsung flavoring held into it. You can see the wee icon bar is still resident whilst you're using the camera, which is kind of nice. There's a remnant of my previous video still there. Because cameras are cameras on tablets, you don't tend to use them if you've got a phone or a camera. So I'll do a quick look. I'll take a picture of him like that. And we'll take a picture of him like that, which took an awful lot longer. And I think the results are, well, the color, well, no, actually. Oh, straight into nip. Oh, pants. I don't know, I'm leaning toward this. It's an awful lot brighter. Not so falsely brighter, I don't think. And I think there's quite a bit more detail has been packed in. The edging looks quite a bit better. There's kind of like a miscellaneous pixeling around here. It does seem to be smoothed off a wee bit more. No, I'm actually going to say this. I prefer this photo. Some people may say they prefer that, but there you go. That's your choice. So then down to the device itself. The surrounds of the device, using it. Oh, I suppose we could do the speakers as well, couldn't we? Yeah, well, remind me to do that, won't you? Because that's how videos work. This is obviously lighter. I used my time wisely whilst the Geekbench was running, and this is 490 grams. That's 508, so there's almost 20 grams of a difference. Hopefully that resonates something with you. And you are prepared to, if you want that, deal with a slightly heavier tablet, or if you just don't want something quite so bulky, or you want something a wee bit bulkier, a bit more of a feel to it, then that's your tablet. I guess there's pros and cons to tableting, and it's a good weapon as well. If you suffer a home invasion or something like that, you could lob that at someone and do more damage to them than you could with this. I think they'd probably take the same amount of battering because this is remarkably well built. For what it is, I wasn't expecting this level of quality. Now, there's a couple of things. That's kind of a plasticky, metallized effect. And then there's this sort of rubberized one, which leaves a bit of fingerprints because I'm a bit greasy at the moment. Is me. And a nice little Lenovo daubing there. That rubberized bit helps you grip it. It gives you just that wee bit of grip. And I think it's the prettier of the two. This one has a much more metal design to it. It feels a lot more metallic. And whenever I put them both side to side, you may prefer that, but I know I much prefer the Lenovo design as well. And it has just a little bit of branding as well to break up some of the blandness that's here. I'm not enthusiastic about the back of this tablet at all. Also, you'll notice that the camera doesn't have a flash. This one does. Not that it makes it an LED. It's hardly anything to write home about, but there you go. On the side here we have a volume up down button, microphone holes, one that is far too close to the SD card. That is dangerous because you can quite easily, when you're talking to someone going to take out your SD card, stick your, oh, I've done that on a phone before, and I wrecked a microphone on a Pixel 4, I think it was Pixel 4. 3 or 4. I can't quite remember, but I stuck that in there and the microphone stopped working. But that's dangerously close. Bad design. USB on the bottom there. Then we have these ports for you to be able to stick on various accessories and some pogo pins as well. Then we have the power button on the side, which is really difficult to find. I find every night whenever I'm putting this down, it's one of those things, you know, like an old person. Sorry, you know, like my mother. Where's the button again? I can't find the button, and you know, you just miss it off there. It's in a weird place. I would have preferred if it was here, or maybe a proper volume rocker or something like that. That would have done me. But I prefer the build quality of the Lenovo. The Samsung has some fairly decent build quality to it. It does feel a wee bit more solid. And it's that kind of Samsung precision engineering. I went on about the position of the screen in this Samsung, where it feels a wee bit, there's a tiny bit of an overhang on these two edges, whereas these two are perfectly flush. I'm not going to go on and on about that. You can see my unboxing for that. But on this side we have 2 speakers and a microphone hole. Then around this side there is only the SIM card, or the SD card tray there. And then we have 2 speakers and a USB Type-C on that side. And then sensibly we have a volume rocker and a power button there. And they're metal buttons and feel really quite nice under touch. I prefer the buttons on this to this, but you can't have everything. Now to the fingerprintiness. Which is more fingerprinty? One thing I left out whenever I was doing this, there's a 3.5mm headphone jack down there. There isn't. There, or there, or there, or there. So you can plug a pair of headphones in that. You have to rely on Bluetooth with that. That's a bit of a sticky wicket. This does not come with pogo pins or any of those sort of maybe slightly older connectors, I guess you could say. If you want to get a keyboard, you're relying on Bluetooth. Whereas this has all manner of different things you can plug into the bottom of it. I say all manner. There's a case and a keyboard. That's about it. But they've put together a whole sort of package for this, which you can buy with keyboard and stylus. I am unsure as to whether or not this works with Samsung stylus. I don't have one to test. I don't see why it wouldn't. I think they would include that technology. However, they have left out certain things like DeX off this, which may annoy. Whereas the Lenovo has the productivity mode built into it. I think in all models. I don't know. Maybe the P11 has it as well. I wouldn't imagine why they would not do it in the P11. And it's fine. It works quite nicely. I have used it twice out of necessity because I was away from my Chromebook and I had a mouse and a keyboard and thought, right, let's try and get some stuff done on this. And it was all right. I have to say, it's not the fastest, but I can't imagine if DeX or something like that was on this, it would be the fastest. But that's one other little solution that you might quite like. If you've got a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse knocking around, you can use this as a desktop computer and get most stuff done. Not all, most. So all in, what do? Do you, if you're pretty much laying down somewhat similar money? So by comparison, right now, today, the Lenovo P11 Plus 4GB with 64GB of storage is $229. The Tab A8 with 32GB of storage and 3GB of RAM is $169. Right there and then, there's a big difference between the two, so you're getting more straight away with this, but you're obviously having to pay more for it. This has dropped in price, and I noticed when I put it into Google Shopping earlier, you could get the 64GB with 4GB of RAM for $150 off another website, which was actually eBay, I think. Yes, it was eBay. You might be able to do something similar with that. It's quite hard to find this with a larger storage option. So if you wanted to spend the $230 that you would be doing on Amazon for the 4GB, 64GB version, the 64GB version with 4GB of RAM is not available from Amazon right now, but it's about £230. So they have kept it equal to this. So everything outside of that, it will boil down to Android 13, Android 12 currently. They have promised 13, but we still haven't had delivery of that. Samsung have been pretty sharp with updating this. You get a slightly larger screen, slightly smaller screen. Slightly faster, well, obviously slightly faster, slightly slower. Productivity mode, no productivity mode, but the Samsung suite of apps which are optimized for this hardware and run pretty well. Build quality wise, I prefer the Lenovo because of that rubberized bit on the back. It just gives you that wee bit more grip. I'm constantly clinging on to this. This needs a case. This doesn't need a case quite as much, and I would be more confident if I dropped it. I think this would fare better than that, despite the fact that has a fairly metal feeling construction. I just get the feeling this would do better. This might bounce. That will impact harder, and it's heavier as well, so if you drop it on tiles, that's probably going to break. That's less likely to break. So I'm sticking with this, and I'm quite happy with that. I wouldn't blame anyone if they moved over to this because they just want a cheap tablet that does nice. But I would snuggle back and think, I did better than you. Honestly, I probably would. I would be thinking inside myself, your tablet's not as good as mine, even though it's running Android 13. So I'm going to go with this. You can totally go with that with my blessing. Absolutely. But I do prefer the P11 Plus. Which do you prefer? Or which did you buy? Did you go for this? Or did you go for something entirely different, which is in the same price bracket and you want to brag about it? Let us know in the comments box down below. So hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. Give us a wee thumbs up if you fancy. And other than that, take care.